The battle for the Platypus Trophy comes to us early in week 3, and if you are maybe unaware of this rivalry or called it from a different name, well, we have some experts joining us to help break down one of the biggest games of this weekend, one I'm so excited is still on the calendar. We have Matt Prehm from Duck Territory and Angie Machado from Beaver Blitz, and let's tell you a little bit more about this matchup before we get into it, because it's a non-conference rivalry game, the 128th meeting, and this is the first one in over 100 years where both teams are undefeated with no ties. That's what happens when we go back 100 years. There were ties. That is certainly helped, of course, by the fact that this game is being played in week 3. And I'm taking the stance, guys, better early than never. I'm so glad that these teams kept it on the schedule despite everything going on with realignment. So I want to know the mindset going into this one for each team. I feel like it's going to be different. So let's start, Angie, with you and the home team. How are the Beavers feeling ahead of this one?
Yeah, it's a happy medium, right? Because this is a huge game for Oregon State, not just because of the rivalry game, and the Oregon game always means something for the bragging rights in the state, but this is an Oregon State team that was left behind as the Pac-12 dissolved. Oregon and Washington left for the Big Ten at the 11th hour, leaving Oregon State and Washington State out. So, this one has some meaning in the fact that Oregon State too wants to, play this one close or eke out a surprise win and an upset to stay on that national stage and stay on the tops of minds of, hopefully finding either a conference home or rebuilding the Pac-12. So this is a big one, but then the coaches also have to keep that team dialed back a little bit with the emotion and keep, the kids from getting too tight and focus on the bigness of this game.
Yeah, for Oregon, what happened last time they were in research still fresh on their minds. They lost this one 38-34. They had a second half lead by more than 2 scores. Oregon State ran all over the ball. Oregon couldn't run the football. Highlights were played over the stadium and throughout the locker room and the facilities all of last year during the week leading up to the game. And this year, that's the same thing. Oregon staff is still playing all those highlights. This is a game they want to win. They know the last time they let a game get away from them that they should not have lost. It cost them a chance into the Pac-12 championship game. This is still a rivalry for them. Oregon's players have said the same thing. This is a game that matters to the state. And for Oregon, it's getting some redemption last time that they were in Research Stadium, but also kind of validating how good they are supposed to be this season. They haven't looked good their first 2 weeks, and it's a hope that they show up and they play their football, to their standard, and show the nation why everyone was so high on them going into the year.
I just want to point out, too, I love when Angie was talking about how the coaches have to dial back the team a little bit, and we were showing video of them holding up chainsaws. So something tells me that there's going to be no dialing back with a rivalry this strong. Matt, let's talk about the offensive line for Oregon. That's exactly where the eyes go when looking at this Ducks team in the early season. I mean, they've already given up more sacks through 2 games than they did all of last season, but as you and I both know, offensive line is not just about sacks. There's been issues on this offense as a whole. So what do you attribute the struggles to on the offensive front?
Yeah, they've lost an NFL first-round quarterback in Bo Nix, who everyone talks about how smart he was, the pre-snap checks, the adjustments that Nix made at the line of scrimmage. That's the obvious one. The second one that maybe has gotten lost in the shuffle is Jackson Powers-Johnson's now in the NFL as well. That was their starting center. And he was a first-year center last year. And he replaced another NFL player, Alex Forsythe, who's in the NFL right now for the Broncos as well. So they've had a dip, I think, from a pre-snap, recognition, from an understanding of the offense and understanding of what the quarterback wants from the quarterback and the center connection there. And then they just haven't played well. And it's really surprising considering Johnny Cornelius is being billed as a potential first-round draft pick this season. He was an all-conference player last year in the Pac-12, and he has struggled out of the gate. He's given up a couple sacks. But it's not just him. Poncho, Oregon's current center, he has had some issues. And Dan Lanning has talked about how they've rotated at center. That's an unusual thing for Oregon, and it's an unusual thing in college football. But he's talked about how they're still looking for their best 5. And at center, sometimes it's a guy's, maybe he's handling his business from a blocking perspective, but his snaps aren't good enough. And then the other option is a walk-on Charlie Pickard, who appears to be the better snapper of the two, but he is nowhere near the level of a blocking offensive lineman from a center or from a pass protection or a run blocking standpoint from Poncho. And so they've got a dilemma here. They've got a guy that can snap the ball well, but isn't as nearly as good of a blocker. But then they've got another option that can block well, but his snaps are an issue. It's a combination of a bunch of things, and we're seeing it play out as they work through these issues early on in the season.
I know while Angie is listening to you talk about the turnover for Oregon this season, she's going, well, there's a bit of it for Oregon State as well. I mean, from coaches to players. Angie, how have they adjusted to this really brand new team?
Yeah, it is a brand new team, Emily. This is a team that, come after last year's Civil War, Coach Smith was on his way to East Lansing, Michigan to take that job with Michigan State. Oregon State, the starting quarterback that had been playing this year followed him, as did a center. Oregon State lost their number one wide receiver and Silas Bolden, who went off to Texas. Their number one running back took off to Miami, and Damian Martinez. They lost two of their defensive starters, in Easton Mascarenas and Akili Arnold, to USC. So it was a huge turnover. December was tumultuous, but Oregon State looked inward, and defensive coordinator Trent Bray, who had an invite to follow Coach Smith to East Lansing, and I know Coach Smith wanted him very badly for what Coach Bray had done in turning around the Oregon State defense. He stepped up. He's a former player at Oregon State. He stepped up and he went out and assembled a staff of former Beavers, to be honest, former players. So Oregon State's offensive coordinator, Ryan Gunderson, came to Oregon State from UCLA. He was a quarterback at Oregon State back in the early 2000s. Keith Hayward, who has extensive ties in the Pac-12 and the NFL, came on as defensive coordinator. Kyle DeVan, Super Bowl ring with the Indianapolis Colts. He came on as the run game coordinator, O-line coach. And they assembled this staff that really kind of circled the wagons and kept guys in play. And then they had to go to the portal and hit the portal heavy. So Giovanni McCoy is the starting quarterback, All-American from Idaho, where he won numerous awards. He's the quarterback. They went to Colorado, grabbed a couple starting O-linemen in Van Wells and Christian Gerard Lichtenhan, and a running back in Anthony Hankerson. So one more big transfer that came on board was running back Jam Griffin, who, for Beaver fans, they knew him. He was at Georgia Tech, transferred to Oregon State. Family reasons got him to Ole Miss last year, but he is back. So Oregon State has that 1-2 punch now at running back. But it is a brand new look Beaver team. It's not one highlighted by a bunch of 5-star guys. It is a team that, you look at Oregon, who is full of stars. Oregon State is going to be more of a team. It's a team first, but it is a brand new look team, and new faces, new scheme, new offensive scheme. It's going to be it's a new look for Duck fans that will be watching.
Yes, I'm certain that both fans of both teams are going to have to pull up the online roster to make sure that they are accustomed to who this new team is. But we could not wait for this game, and so we actually simulated it 20 times on EA College Football 25. And this is the first time it's happened, but Oregon swept all 20. But that is just a video game. So we're going to talk keys to both. They say throw out the record books for rivalries, but the virtual ones count for this too. Let's start with Angie. How does Oregon State pull off this upset?
Yeah, it's a couple things. Oregon State's going to need their best effort across the board, offense and defense. Offense has been a little slow. We haven't seen a lot from Oregon State as far as playbook and the passing game. Oregon State has been lights out in the run game, have been racking up rushing yards, have thrown for only 41 passes this season in 2 games. So they're going to need to dial up the passing game somewhat. But I see this as being one on defense. I'd like to see them pressure Dylan Gabriel, Duck quarterback, just because what I've seen from him, he doesn't react well when he's under pressure. So if Oregon State can dial up some pressure there, if the running game and they can control the clock, I think that's going to be a huge thing with Anthony Hankerson, Jam Griffin controlling the clock. Oregon State has actually played really clean football, so I don't see penalties potentially being an issue. And then obviously special teams. Oregon has shown that they are elite as special teams, so Oregon State is going to have to watch who they kick and punt to, and then make sure that coverage is dialed in.
Yeah, for Oregon, Angie's right. Like the on paper, the talent here is different. Oregon is 6th nationally in our team talent composite that we have on 24/7 Sports. Oregon State's 73rd. Like on paper, Oregon is a significantly better team. But we all know in college football, and as Oregon has shown the last 2 weeks of the season, that games aren't won on paper. They're won on how you execute. They're won on how you show up and play to your standard. And for Oregon, they haven't done that yet, and especially up front, along the offensive line. This game to me hinges on how well this offensive line plays Saturday against Oregon State. If they play to their standard, Oregon should have probably no problem getting out of Reser Stadium with a win, because they significantly have a deeper team or more talented team. But they haven't been able to do that. And so that creates a concern. How is this team going to handle blitzes? How is this team going to handle the pre-snap communication that's required in a hostile environment? Because they've struggled in a friendly environment of Autzen Stadium the last 2 weeks. This will be maybe the more talented team that have played so far this season. I'll be curious to just where things line along the offensive line. If they play well, if they protect Dylan Gabriel at quarterback, they've shown in the spurts this season that their skill players have the speed, their running backs have the talent. The offense is set up to be successful. They just have to give time to Dylan Gabriel to be able to make the plays at quarterback. And if he doesn't have the time, it turns into a game where Oregon State's probably going to have a chance at the very end to hold on to victory or win it, because Oregon's offense has just been stuck in first gear, and it's a large part of it is because of the inconsistent play of protecting Dylan Gabriel and opening up the run lanes.
Tough place they're about to head to try and figure out all of those offensive woes, but here we are in week 3 with this rivalry game. Again, so excited that we're still playing. I don't care what time of year it is. So you guys enjoy this game, and thank you so much for the great breakdowns. You can keep it locked into Duck Territory for all things Oregon football and Beaver Blitz, for everything you need to know about Oregon State. The 2 writers you just heard from and their whole crew, they got you covered all season long.